Joanne Wilson, and this is Positively Gotham Gal. Real, honest, and meaningful conversations with women entrepreneurs about their approach to life, business, and everything in between. We're just going to start talking about you and your career.
Cool.
All right, great. So you're long on art, and your impact in the art world has been significant, also from a very sort of uh, gritty, getting involved, different organizations. But let's start at the beginning. So, are you an original?
No, I am not. I am from the suburbs of Philadelphia. And so yeah, so my first experiences with art were through my grandmother, who was a painter. Even went to art school. um, and had a studio. Her garage she converted into a painting studio and would sell work and have shows, but mostly she was she raised her three daughters and was very social. Had the best taste also that I've ever seen still of anybody to this day, like her home and her collections of things. And so she used to bring me we used to go to the Philadelphia Art Museum a lot. We also used to go to the Annenberg Center to see contemporary dance. And probably without her, I wouldn't have really had much exposure growing up because I didn't know anything about art galleries, really.
Right. So that opened your eyes to something. Right. But when you went to college, I'm not sure where you went to school, but you started out going to the contemporary department at Christie's, which is where so many people start out.
Oh, really? Yeah, that was also through luck. I went to Washington University in St. Louis, and I ended up with an art history degree and a minor in painting, and thought I was interested in being an artist. But then through my aunt knew somebody that was giving public speaking lessons to somebody at Chris. There was some way that I got into the contemporary art department as an intern, which was like a 3-month internship right out of college. And as I've said before, that people think is really kind of amusing, I think it was me and two Belgian kids that were the children of like big art patrons. That's how they got the internship. So it was it was very lucky. I had a couple of jobs at Christie's. I always sort of knew it wasn't the right fit. But it was a really good foundation for sure.
And then you went to be a director somewhere, and you were there for 5 years. And you obviously was bitten by the bug, and you have an entrepreneurial spirit because not only have you opened your own gallery, but you've been at it for a long time, and you've been involved with several organizations in the art world. What was it when you were there that you're like, yeah, I got to do this myself?
Yeah, so it was a combination of um working and facilitating things in art, like organizing shows, bringing people together, and which I guess um satisfied my interest both in, as you're saying, something entrepreneurial, but also something creative involving art and just sort of art that I've always had been looking at and thinking about. And then also I was of the age where, a lot of people I knew were, getting their graduate degree, their MFAs in art. So I was going to a lot of their thesis shows, and just all my friends were artists as well, and boyfriends and whatever. And so it was just kind of this, as you've probably seen, this world is one that's like very, very immersive. And so it really, yeah, so it just was the right fit. It clicked, and the two owners of the gallery that I worked for, Chris D'Amelia and Lucien Terrasse. I started at the front desk because I needed a full-time job again, and making art wasn't working out. And they were very, very supportive in allowing me to start curating shows and bringing some of the younger artists into the program. So yeah, so definitely got the bug. Didn't know much about, it's really only the children of art collectors in New York or LA or those few other places that know about sort of gallery culture, and then the rest of us maybe more now than when I was starting out, but the rest of us kind of backed into it, I think.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense. I mean, and when you opened your gallery, did you have this sort of mission? I mean, you are, you know, your reputation precedes you. I mean, you have a keen talent for spotting, artists that are emerging and help them grow into mid-career international artists and especially a bend towards female artists. You want to talk a little bit about when you open, and I'm sure, since 2008, things have evolved. When you opened, did you just say, okay, I like these people, I'm going to represent them? Or did that kind of mission and thought process sort of evolve over time?
Well, thanks for the question. Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, I'm generally a pretty intuitive person. So which luckily I have a great director at the gallery right now that can help me. She's like more, organized and administrative. Also has a great eye, but so I mean that's always how I've started working with artists is kind of and then even more so now, just kind of trusted my eye. But that takes a while to sort of earn that trust in yourself. But when I started out, I was working for two men that were partners, and they were great, but they always kind of kept me a little bit at arm's length with like finances and how to run the business. And I
Hmm.
never even generated an invoice. They would even though I love talking to people about art, probably even more so back then with less pressure. So, they would generate the invoice and then I would sign. If it was one of my clients, I would sign and say, thank you. So it never felt like it was going to be, they had a lot of faith in me, but it was never going to be kind of an equal partnership. That's where I grew up. So when I decided to open my own, they were also very supportive. I started really small. I didn't have any money. I got out to loans and was able to build a little bit of money just through working with collectors. Um, and yeah,
And you opened downtown in Orchard Street on the
yeah.
Lower East Side, which, that was not where a lot of galleries were at that point.
No, I did have two colleagues though. Miguel Abreu, who's great and still has that space, was there, and then a colleague named Lisa Cooley was there. So I kind of had no idea what I was looking for. I did have a vision for the artists that I wanted to show, which again were mainly, people my age that I had been following that, were out of grad school that I wanted to work with. And then had gained a bit of a reputation
Hmm.
from organizing shows at the gallery that I worked at D'Amelio Terrace. So, it wasn't out of, I mean, I would encourage people just to kind of, open up shop, but it is like, I always say that I wish I could have worked at even more galleries before I opened my own. Cause you learn something and people and the press and people know, they start to learn who you are a little bit and what you're into.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
totally understand that. And you also are involved with one of the large art organizations,
Yeah. Nada.
when NADA. And how long have you been involved with NADA?
Um, a number of years now. I think I was president for 3 years and actually just changed. Like I'm just back on the board, which is great. And but a while. The director of the organization, Heather Hubbs, we've known each other a long time, and like our son, both have one child, and they're 2 weeks apart. And Nada has been was and is really important for young galleries or uh in a lot of ways, in like a community sense, and then also particularly the fair in Miami, it's practically really important just because it's the end of the year, and it people love that fair, and people, you can make money a little bit easier, I think, at that fair than a lot of other art fairs. Because of many art
Mm-hmm.
fairs, and still I participate in art fairs where we don't, it's much more about the exposure and less about making any money, unfortunately. But I mean, a little bit. You have to make a little bit,
Yes.
or at least pay your bills.
So yeah, you got to do something. I mean, what's interesting, I mean, you've been around since 2008. Your gallery has expanded over time, and certainly your roster of artists that you have partnered with to help grow their careers. Talk a little bit about your thoughts, in this strange art time period where you're seeing large galleries like Pace or Hauser-Wirth or others, that even Zwerner, that are like starting to look like
Hmm.
museums or gobbling up a lot of the small galleries. Like, where do you see all this going? I mean, it's really become a very, stratified market.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have lots of opinions on it. It's also part of my daily experience for a while now. And of course, I guess it has to do a lot with goals. Like, you talk to a lot of people, with businesses or that run organizations. I guess my goal right now, at least, I mean, never say never, is to, I don't necessarily want to compete at that level, but I have to respect the galleries that do, because I know it's hard no matter what scale. And I also have had to come to terms with what artists want at different levels in their career. And the issue is actually somebody that I was talking to not too long ago that actually specializes in sort of helping structure businesses was like, but it's okay because you have totally different clients than David's Werner. And I was like, that's the problem, is that we actually all have the same clients. Yeah. So, and especially now with technology, and the art world was like I think we may have been the last people. We were holding on as long as we can, and we still are, and it'll always circle back, but to like real life physical artworks. Yeah. So, so finally, during COVID, everybody kind of started to freak out because none of us had the technology that we needed, probably except for Zorner. So anyway, so for me, it's still about sort of working with the artist directly. I can't imagine having a gallery that was so big that, I couldn't have a part in every show. So I've had to grow that kind of respect for, it's whatever the artist wants. Now I try to sit down because it's all about communication. So now what I really hope, and I try, and when we start working with artists, I try to have this be sort of the most important part of the conversation, because it's what I believe is that I want things to be fruitful from both sides. If there's things that you want, like if you want a Pace or you want a Zorner or something, let's just talk about it, because they're all my colleagues too.
Right.
I want things to progress. I want careers to grow, including, mine, the galleries and the artists. And that's what the most important thing is. And if you feel like you need something else, let's figure it out. But it's when that kind of communication breaks down.
Right. You're very artist friendly. You care about the artist at the end of the day.
Well, it's still a rare thing when you can have a blossoming career as an artist. So I'm very thankful that we've been able to help in that regard with some people. So I just want people to succeed, really.
Which makes, I'm on the same page as you are. with different types of
Yeah.
content. So you started your gallery in the midst of the 2008
Right.
recession, and now you just went through the wonderful pandemic. And what did you see change in the art world during that pandemic? And where do you think the art world is going? Like, you're seeing all the NFTs that people are doing, and how is that going to connect with the art world? And as we're becoming more, the ability through technology to create a more global platform for your
Mhm.
gallery, or even having a really solid back end software to talk to your customers and your clients. Where do you see all this going? As art is, I'm a big believer that art should be able to sit on
Mhm.
everybody's
Mhm.
wall.
Yeah, I mean, I also love I'm one of those people that that has always loved things to be accessible. So I
Hmm.
do like this. I don't want art or the art world to be an exclusive place. So I think that I there was, I don't know if you saw this, but there was, I didn't go to the opening, but People just had a show that opened at Jack Hanley.
Yeah,
So that was kind of interesting crossover, and I mean, I look forward to talking to Jack one day about how that came about. But that's like kind of a beautiful combination, because you would think that because so much money has been talked about with Beeple's work, you would think that he wouldn't be at like
yes.
a sort of an a gallery that's been around for a long time, but it's not associated with bling or money necessarily. So I don't know. We'll have to see how everything sits. I mean, the auction houses are another entity that it's kind of auction time right now.
That are starting to look more like galleries. Yeah. I think that a lot of those auction houses are starting to have a desire to look more like galleries.
Yeah, so that's hard. There are auctions. They they don't have as much of a choice as we do. In my opinion, I mean, that's why they were some of the first places to kind of embrace NFTs, because of because of the money. They auctions, they're big, the big ones at least. There's not as much flexibility for curating as we have here, and they've tried off and on, but it doesn't, I don't know. I do There are reasons for the separations that have been created, when collectors
Hmm.
open galleries, or auction houses try to be a gallery. It doesn't seem to quite work.
Hmm.
I don't know. Money is. I mean, I remember Paul Cooper's quoted a couple of times saying, that was before the money in art. So this next thing,
But there's always been money in art.
well, I guess maybe not like that. I mean, the world has changed a lot,
The world has changed tremendously.
right? And so has New York City. Obviously, it's made artists have to make more money so they can stay here, and a lot of them feel like they need to be here to grow careers. Um, so I don't know.
I mean, I think more people are going to become artists.
What do you think it's going to look like?
I mean, it's a good question. I do think the importance having a really solid back end technology for all of the galleries is important. I mean, just as someone who goes to shows and someone writes something on a sticky and then I never hear from them, I find insanely frustrating.
Hmm.
I have different relationships with a variety of galleries, and I want them to talk to me like someone they know, which would only be done through a back end
Hmm.
software so they can see what I own and what I'm doing, or even things that I own that I bought from another gallery, right? So that I'm
Right.
looked at as an individual collector who has these multiple relationships. I think the NFTs are interesting.
Hmm.
Um, the few artists that I have talked to that are um, uh, significant artists where they are represented by galleries don't seem as enamored with the NFT as it is by seem to be more street artists that are
Mm-hmm.
building these platforms to create currencies around them. The cool
Mm-hmm.
thing is that everybody can participate at the prices when they come in. And I think the one thing that's the most interesting thing to me in the art world is we have better technologies and thinking about all these fairs in the post-COVID world is how art I don't I know art is an asset class, but I think of it more as having something that I really love and I'm supporting an artist because I think their work is great. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't think of like, "Oh, I'm going to buy that because it's going to be great and I'm going to sell it in 3 years." Like, that's not my mentality. I know there's a lot of people that have that mentality. And, I just look at what you've done for so many years and continue to grow. I'm concerned that there will not be that what is the next generation of galleries? That I think that is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I kind of love having these conversations, and that's part of the reason that I like being a part of NADA is because I like talking to. I've had a gallery for 14 years, so I like talking to people just starting out and what their goals are, and helping them also just to stay afloat. Like I come from, like, I was a director at a gallery when I was looking at a lot of a lot of my contemporaries when I was in my 20s had their own galleries, and a lot of them that are the reason that I have a gallery now did not make it through.
Hmm.
Some people think it's really easy to sell art, even in a commercial way, and it's not. And also art fair, and budgeting, and very few of us come from business backgrounds, including myself. So I think there's always just the nuts and bolts, like, are we going to survive? So, like, let's get that far, and then once you feel like you have enough that you're not always, trying to keep up, and you're hoping to grow, which is definite, grow in whatever way you want to, which is, that's why it's interesting for me to hear your opinions, as you just said them. Yeah, I agree. I mean, having things be more streamlined, having a great team, listening to, like, I mean, even your staff members, because I'm starting to get, because I'm starting to, remember when, I like some of when I was staff at a gallery, and we were like, oh, why aren't they doing this? They should be doing this, and so I mean, I try to listen, and I try to not be like a fuddy duddy, which I am to a certain extent because I'm, in my mid 40s. So technology wise, I can be a bit of a fuddy duddy. So I have to listen to the collectors and to the people around me, to get moving without losing, the reason that I
That you're in business in the
do
first place.
this.
Exactly.
Yeah, but COVID actually, weirdly, even though it was a really tough time in every way, it weirdly helped with that, because I think I depended so much on people coming into the gallery and having these conversations and all this sort of stimuli. I mean, that's sort of why I never was able to make it, I think, as an artist, is because I wasn't good at, I needed to work with and off of other people. But COVID, I think, did help a little bit with not always needing, I mean, once we got out of the extreme portion of it, not always needing that kind of, like, constant conversation and stimuli, so that hopefully some of these other things that will keep us in contact with people like you, like, we finally hired our first sales assistant that's really just gonna help us stay in touch with people. So I think adapting in that way, as a gallery, will help us survive and grow at a pace that we're sort of ready for. But I think as far as what it's going to look like out there, I think it's just always going to kind of look the same because it's about art. It's about seeing art and showing art. And so one thing's business, and then the other thing is, the artists are, I mean, this gives a lot of opportunity. The growth of the art market gives a lot of opportunity to people like me,
Agreed.
and then also to just artists to be able to have careers.
Yeah, I mean, as we
Yeah.
become more automated world, we're going to see more people in the
Yeah.
art world, and I think that a lot of people through this time of COVID looked at their lives and said, "Is this really what I want to be doing?" I mean, and
Yeah.
so I think it will look back as a much more transformative time during COVID versus the anxiety that we
Yeah.
all had.
Right.
What are your thoughts? I mean, in general, galleries have been really a 50-50 split among the artists, and I've heard so many different rumblings over the years about, galleries have to now market, galleries have to now have PR, all these different things around the artists, and that it's really hard to even make money on that particular split. Are you seeing
Hmm.
changes in that area?
The split, like the 50-50 split, going more in the which direction?
Well, more to the gallery and less to the artist, actually.
Yeah, that there are some sort of things that I have never questioned. I I have over the years, as some artists that I've worked with have, gone into another universe with their demand and their, honestly, their sort of talent and abilities, and I've known they've needed more. I mean, I thought about the other way, just so that basically I could keep working with the artists.
Which makes sense.
But yeah, I don't know, it's always, as any gallery owner will tell you, it's a funny format that we do, like I talked about earlier, have to be really careful about how we spend money, because it's, well, first of all, I mean, depending on what city you're in, in New York, you've already got like a big bill every month just for your space you're in.
And now the bills that you have to go to these art fairs to make yourself present.
And the art fairs, and my great employees, how much of their money goes to taxes, and I mean, it's rough
Mhm.
trying to make a profit. So yeah, but that being said, I could I somehow could never imagine an artist getting less than 50%. um but it does seem that, even as the gallery gets older, we have artists that, we have more kind of sell through shows than we used to. I do tend to take that money and put it into um, things like when I can, like PR, like books. Like I told you, we just made this book of Hillary Petches.
Who, you saw early on, and her career has exploded.
Exploded. So this will be our third show. We're opening a show on Saturday. It'll be our third show. And even the show, she had a show right before the pandemic. It was only open for a couple weeks before we had to close it. And by that point, it was also her career was enormous, and it was very international, the demand. And but yeah, I tend so I you know so I spent money on her because she deserves it.
Right.
And I would like to do that with every artist. That would be the goal. But yes, the things are we're not rolling in it,
Well, it's a
showing
hard. It is.
contemporary art.
It's a love of the art and the artist. And so, do
Yeah.
any of your artists, are they talking about the interest to make NFTs, to thinking about you know direct to consumer versus using galleries? I mean, to me, I think the importance of a gallerist is tremendous. And I have seen artists that I think have lost the path of their careers because they had this
Yeah.
vision that they would only be carried by Werner from day one at 21 years old. And
Yeah.
I think that having a good gallerist is just worth their weight in gold.
I think so too. I think it does help shape things. And also, I like collaborating with other galleries in other parts of the world. I would never think that everything we do here is everything that an artist is going to need with their whole career. So, I've always loved my colleagues, so I like collaborating with them. But I mean, there's always probably even it's weird. I feel like even more so a number of years ago was there more talk of like um having to have conversations with artists about selling out of their studio and but I can understand how that can be really tempting. But yeah, so it's about a partnership. I tend not to want to get involved with artists that there perhaps is that indication that it's going to be a rocky road moving forward.
That makes
So
sense.
I think that, and that's just because I know how much I can handle. So I think that I I mean, I dodge that with I try to dodge that in every part of my life and my work. Um but however, if things do happen like that, then yes, again, we want to have those conversations. But yeah, I mean, the finances are tricky for
They
everybody
are.
doing this. I mean, and everybody period
Everybody, no,
in life.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I have
Yeah.
two more questions. In this post
Yeah.
pandemic world, and we've just ripped off the masks in New York, thank God. Where do you see the art world in 5 years? Is it just going to remain
I
the
should
same and evolve into the other thing? Or is it going to be more people
I mean
collecting? Is it going to be more work in regards to using technology as a platform, such as NFTs or animation, which is starting to come and explode?
Yeah. I mean, I think that all sounds great. It makes me kind of tired to think about it, um but I don't I yeah, it's hard for me to see it in any changing that drastically. Um yeah. I mean, because I think we do I think galleries, at least the gallery part, and the artists, when you deal with them one on one, I mean, we're all kind of looking for something that makes us feel like we belong, like we're communicating with others. And yeah, I think just like when artists kind of start, like you're like they're painters forever, and then they start making ceramics or they start making prints or photography or vice versa. I think it's going to be the same thing with NFTs. If there's going to be good partnerships that they can form with people that can help them discover how their ideas can fit into an NFT that makes sense, that's not solely about currency and about their practice, I think that's great.
I
I'm sure
agree.
any artist would be excited for that because it's just a different medium.
I totally agree.
But we need the communicators, right? So like
Hmm.
I guess the same role that we have here at the gallery will need people like that to kind of bridge those worlds more
Hmm.
than they are now. But it's cool how, I mean, I also, like, I was telling this someone the other day, like uh the Macaron gallery in LA showed like Grimes
Yep.
NFTs a really, like, kind of a long time ago, 2 or 3 years ago maybe, or something.
Hmm.
Or it was before COVID. And I kind of dug them, I thought they were good looking.
Listen, I think they're continuing to get
Yeah.
better looking,
Yeah, yeah.
which is, I think that that's just an added bonus of that whole
Yeah.
arena. So, one last question: do you still paint?
No, no, I don't. I draw sometimes, but and you never know. Again, you never know. Like my colleague Joel Messler had a flourishing career, and his gallery used to be right across from me on Orchard Street. So, a lot of us, because of our passion for art in general, have dabbled over the years. But do you? Do you make art at
I
all?
would say that I love creating. I'm not an artist. My mother was a painter. My aunt was professional. My daughter is an artist. So there's certainly art in the family. I mean, my biggest art projects during COVID were crocheting blankets and sitting down a sewing machine and making one of my daughters a comforter, which is something that I will never do again, but
Yeah.
I'm very glad that I did it. So I will say I do like creative projects. And I guess if I had to choose, I would wish I could sing, or actually really paint. I think that would be like such a gift.
Yeah,
But I don't have either. I don't have either of those talents, at
for
least
sure.
yet. Anyway, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, Rachel, thanks so much.